All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to April's Caucus on April Fool's Day. It is not a joke. We are live here and joined by incredible students right at the beginning. So, Clara Mitchell, thank you for joining us. Everett Shedd, thank you for joining us. And Mr. Reed Finkenbinder, thank you for joining us under the incredible direction of Mrs. Noelle Giselle. So we are here, and you're going to talk to us a little bit about some of the incredible innovations that you created and the contests that you participated in. So we'll let you take it away. Thanks for joining us.
I was just going to introduce them real quick and just give a brief overview of them so that they can take it away. So I am Ms. Giselle, and this is a great group of sixth graders that I have here. I teach K through 12 gifted, but they took place in two competitions this year. All three of them were just at the CAIU Next STEM Challenge, where they were tasked with finding a better way to improve our infrastructure. So they'll be presenting their bridge. And then Everett Shedd he entered the Pennsylvania Invention Convention. Out of 500 submissions, he was one of 50 students selected to go to Hershey and present his project at the PEC conference. So he presented in front of a bunch of adults, and then he'll introduce that to honor the greatness that they did. And
Don't sweat it. Most adults can't figure out how to turn it on either.
Hi, I am Everett Shedd. This is Clara Mitchell, and that's the Reed Finkenbinder. We are all in 6th grade. We designed a special type of bridge that helps divert traffic during car accidents on the bridge. Our first bridge idea had a road on top of the bridge, and if there was an accident on the main road, the top, then at the start of the bridge, the ramp would be lifted up, and cars would go on the bottom road underneath the bridge. But then Reed realized there was a problem. What if there are cars that are stuck on the top?
Then I thought of the idea of the bridge lowering in sections so cars could be diverted underneath. The bridge would lower from 3 different sections depending on where the crash was located. The sections are here, here, and here. When we realized that whenever the ramp would lower down, there would be a gap in between the ramp and the road. We would replace this gap with asphalt or another alternative material, and we would put it in with hydraulics or another method. This all would be done after emergency services arrived.
We started building the new model with Ingeno blocks instead of connects. With connects, we were not able to make repeating patterns as easily as the Ingeno blocks. Also, they were more stable, and we could rotate them more easily while the pieces were still connecting to each other. This allowed for more customization of the bridge. We were going to duplicate the bridge to have one bridge for each direction, but we ran out of Ingeno blocks. In summary, we think we have come up with a creative solution to a real-world problem. Hopefully, our bridge design will help keep drivers and passengers safe and keep traffic moving. Are there any questions?
So how it would work is if the car is driving and crashes here, this ramp would lower down, and all the cars would be able to drive underneath onto the opposite road, and the ramp going up to the top would then be lifted, and the cars could just drive on out.
Incredible for traffic control, and I definitely could use it on my way to work. So thank you for developing this. And also for our incredible first responders, right, to be able to get to the accident and be able to help those, which is more important than me getting to work. But just an unbelievable job of using that engineering design process, right? Of thinking of we think we have a solution, and then problem solving and working together and coming up with ideas and going through that again, and never really finished until you're here. And I think already you probably are like, these are a couple more tweaks that we can make.
there, if you look behind you, that was the original design of the bridge, and they extended it. I think, if we had had more time, we probably would have added some lifts, pulleys and things like that. But they reworked it overcame and persisted through every challenge that came their way, and it was a great experience.
What was the timeline from start to finish until this finished product?
Till we figured out our idea, we probably had a month, and I see them about, once a week. So we were really getting it in there. They had to make a design notebook, if you look behind you, where they had to log all of their progress. Clara did a lot of this. They really did a great job at dividing the workload. Everett had just presented his invention, so he was really great at coming up with the presentation part. Reed used Tinkercad and designed this, replicated each block to a half size of every block on there because that's what would fit on that plane. So he had to do a lot of math to figure out, because they had to disassemble this whole thing and then reassemble it in a 2-hour timeline when it got to the competition, which we found to be a lot more challenging than we had originally thought. We thought we would just be able to snap it all back together, but we ran into some hiccups, but they did a great job again working together, collaborating. And again, watching all of that was really great, it was really fun. And especially for their first time, and it's only gonna get better each time they come together and do it. And then, Chief Everett, do you wanna present your backseat barrier? Sure. Do you wanna use 2 chairs to show how it would work? Okay. Got it. We'll draw it out. Let's draw it again. All right.
I was invited to the PA Invention Convention at PNC, and this is a little bit about my invention. The problem that I came up with is that there wasn't enough accessible storage space in cars. Another problem in cars is pets jumping up into the front seat and disturbing the driver and passenger. I invented the backseat barrier, which is a storage divider that is placed in between the front seat and the back seat of the vehicle, as you can see. The backseat barrier would be made out of mesh, but this is made out of cardboard. The invention fixes both of these problems because it adds on some more storage space for parents and kids in a car and blocks pets from jumping into the front seat. Statistics say that 84% of pet owners have no pet restraint systems, and 1 in 5 pet owners have to take their hands off of the steering wheel to stop their pets from getting into the front seat. Also, more than half of drivers take their hands off the wheel to pet their pets. Finally, when pets are unrestrained, the drivers report being distracted by them more than twice as often. Some people that would use this are pet owners in need of more storage in their vehicles and keeping pets out of the front seat. Here's my prototype of the backseat barrier. Some parts are 3D printed while others are not, and this still helped a lot in making the prototype in the presentation. Thank you for inviting me to present at this meeting.
Incredible. And I really like how you identified the problem and looked to solve the problems, right? The pets interrupting, or distracting the driver. But who doesn't want more storage in a car, especially with young children or even pets? I certainly want to place an order for 2 of those, if I could, please.
We can make you a deal.
I just have a quick comment, and I'm sorry I walked in here a little bit late. A student had a follow-up question that I was answering inside the conference room. So did you guys do this for Innovation Challenge? Is that what you were saying? Is that what?
There were 2 competitions.
Okay.
3 of them, we went to the CAIU Connect STEM Challenge.
Okay.
And then Everett went to the Pennsylvania Invention Convention.
Okay.
To do separate competitions.
And what grades are you guys? What grade?
6.
6th grade. So just for a thought for the future, in addition, they could use the same projects at the Capital Area Science and Engineering Fair, CASIF. That starts next year for you guys, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. They have an engineering component, so it's not, you don't enter like a traditional science project that's not your hypothesis and testing, but you actually present your engineering ideas. And if you participate over those several years, all the way through high school, or through your senior year of high school, they have a pretty hefty scholarship money for the parents out there that can go into the thousands of dollars for every year that you're a participant. So if this is something you're interested in, you continue to do through high school, you know, it kind of you get two bangs for your buck, so to speak. You've already done all of the work. Even if you expand on something from year to year and you show that building process of the, say, your bridge or whatever, it's something more for them to look into. I know we've got a pretty robust program in the high school and in the middle school for them to be able to have that avenue to be able to participate. So, yeah, it's very exciting. Thank you.
Just before you leave, I have a certificate of appreciation for really embodying our portrait of a graduate. When you think of innovators, you three certainly fit that bill. So thank you for all you've done and continue to innovate, continue to challenge, continue to design, and continue to think of problems and look for those solutions. Great job.
Thank you.
And for the record, we will not be offended if you don't stay around for the meeting. We understand.
Because I'm out of camera space. Well, she's going to get it. All right, never mind. You want a picture of her butt? No.
Okay, you want to stand up next to your, or
There you go. Yeah, get that.
stand behind you?
There you
Make
go.
money here, so
That's cute. Yeah, this thing won't touch. And then send it to me. I'll send it to I'll send it to one of the other teachers.
What's your number?
717-834-6744.
Just an amazing job in giving these kids the opportunity and really feeding their creativity and just taking the gifted program to a whole new level. So I just really want to thank her for that and her guidance in that.
Thank you.
All right, looking at our agenda for this evening, just want to go over the agenda for next Tuesday's school board meeting. And under resignations, leaves, transfers, and employment, we have under personnel, we have a resignation of Kaylee Zarkovich from the position of elementary school teacher at the conclusion of this school year. So we thank Mrs. Zarkovich for all that she's done at our elementary school, and we wish her all the best as she continues her career in education. Under retirement, we have the rescinding of the intent to retire, and we're excited that Dr. Rosario Apley will be joining us and continuing in the outstanding work that she's done in high school as our Spanish teacher. So we're excited that Dr. Apley is going to continue. Under employment, we have Brandy Berwin from Liverpool as our assistant board secretary, Mr. Ken Medina from Palmyra as our board secretary, and we're excited to bring to for your consideration, Mr. Jacob Smith from New Bloomfield for elementary teacher, replacing Mrs. Zerkovic, at the end of the 24-25 school year, starting in 25-26. Substitute custodian, we have Carrie St. Pierre for our summer help custodian, and that rounds out resignations, leaves, transfers, and employment. Any questions? At this time. That rounds it out for this time. Looking at some agenda items for the month of April, we do have some payment of bills and orders. We do have a motion to appoint Saxon and Stump as our district's special counsel. Now, that is from April 1st to the conclusion of this school year, because the law firm of Stock and Leader transitioned to Saxon and Stump. So the rates will continue for this year. Obviously, there'll be a rate probably adjustment as we look at next school year. There typically is at some point. And there are special counsel. We've continued that relationship. That service is still going to be there, just a broader and a different law firm under that umbrella, and does not change the elements of the contract that was previously signed with Stock and Leader. Under curriculum, we have a motion to approve some curriculum maps for Family Consumer Science, Advanced Culinary, High School English 9 through 12, so all of the hard work there, English and AP Language and Composition, AP Literature and Composition, and Math Algebra 2. We have some contracts here that I'd like to talk about a little bit. We have the first contract, which is a motion to approve the agreement with All-American Athletics. All-American Athletics is a co-stars company to replace in kind the bleachers at the middle school and high school gymnasium. So that's part of our overall capital plan. This wouldn't be included in any guaranteed energy savings plan or GISA. This would be for $389,819 and would be paid through that 2024 small issuance bank note. So once we don't have a timeline on this at this time, once we would procure that contract, they would begin that ordering of these bleachers and begin that timeline for installation, both at the middle school and at the high school, replacing in kind and ensuring that the rise and rung and the steps meet ADA compliancy, as well as handrails are located and vinyl barriers on the sides for all guests.
How does that number compare to what we originally thought them? Because it seems, is it lower? Because
Yes.
I was thinking we thought it was going to be
Yep.
higher than that.
Yeah, it's a
so
little lower.
That's
yep.
good. And it's meeting everything that you were hoping for it to look like or do. Yeah?
Yep.
Happy? Okay.
And it includes removal of the old and installation of the new.
Does it change our capacity much, or in terms of?
Well, it always could change the capacity a little bit because there are going to be some cutouts, but these cutouts are ones that if a guest needs that space, you can pull in and push in that space or pull it out if needed for just a seating. So yeah, it is going to change the capacity a little bit because when you have the long rows that aren't, but it's not going to be,
Not much?
no.
Okay. Good.
Excited about the next. We've been waiting for the new release of the iPad. We were thinking it was going to be called, the iPad 11, but it's just called iPad, but it is 11 because it's 11 inches. So it's a little larger of an iPad, if I'm accurate in saying that. So correct me, because sometimes I overtalk when it comes to these things. We're looking to refresh with a lease to own at $109,487.50 each year. There is no interest on this, so it's a 0%. At $437,950 is the total for those years here as well, part of our device refresh plan that we have. And it is a little bit under what we originally budgeted for the last couple of years. So we made that adjustment accordingly. C is a motion to approve a contract with Docio Office Solutions. This is a 60-month lease agreement beginning July 1 for our copiers, 2025. It's a monthly cost of $1,022.75, which includes equipment and support. And thanks to the hard work of Mr. Browse and Mrs. Matash, it actually is a $720.59 per month cost savings. So nice job on that. Nice job. And motion to approve a
Maybe
contract.
we'll have to use that money to buy the printer for the library. Just saying.
Motion to approve a contract with Weatherproofing Technologies. This, again, is part of our overall. One of the things we wanted to do before getting that finalized quote with Tremco for the roof treatments is to see if any of those areas need to have the insulation repaired. And the insulation repair will be determined by any spots through the use of those thermal imaging, infrared, to determine a moisture survey. So we're asking for that to be approved so we can conduct that and then to determine what that overall cost treatment of the roof will be. That rounds out agenda. Oh, I'm sorry, we do have some disposition of items, some old items from the nurse's office that need to be disposed of, that are in no longer working order. Reports, we will have a report from the Cumberland Perry Career and Technical Center and the Black Hawk Foundation, and that rounds out agendas, items thus far for April. All right, any questions on those? All right, let's roll into budget, I know, one of my favorites too. Budget review number 5. We're going to do some things a little bit different. I'm going to go through the standard presentation a little quickly for you, and then we're going to transition into one that Mr. Browse and Mr. Medina worked on, and it really kind of breaks down, I think, and takes a look at where some of that overall, when we talk, is being spent. Is that fair to say? So during this, if I go a little fast, just stop me at any point. All right, our budget focus continues here. We talk about it time and time, and you heard incredible questions from our students. Continue to enhance and maintain our curriculum offering for our students, maintain and enhance facilities, and work to provide a budget that is financially responsible. Some of our budget considerations continue to be cyber charter school payments. You'll see that more defined in our next slide, and you'll see that here in the next graph that's provided. Special education under IDEA, utilities, salary benefits, and PSERS. So some of the top budget pressures you'll see in this graph, and this graph actually came from, it's a publication that's done yearly by the Pennsylvania School Boards Association, and they survey school districts all across Pennsylvania and look at what are some of the top budget pressures that schools face. Well, number one is cyber charter tuition payments. 73% of all school districts say this is a gigantic pinch point. Number two continues to be the special education costs. And when we say costs, it's not because we don't want and we don't believe that that's a responsibility. We're saying, hey, when IDEA was first enacted, it was supposed to be 100% fully funded, and it's not even close to that. So it's meeting the helping to help us meet those needs of our learners, and it's a responsibility we take very seriously, which goes to the next column, which is adequate state funding. I won't go over all of these columns, but certainly I think this overall replication is replication of what we experience here as well. The next is just our budget timeline. Here we're going to do our kind of overall discussion in April caucus. Well, May will be the preliminary budget, and we'll talk a little bit about that for final budget approval in June as per the Pennsylvania Department of Education and the PA School Code. New budget items to note. Nothing has changed here at this particular point except for getting a little bit more specific. I rounded up, but a little more specific, and you'll get more detail here. This is a nice kind of preview as we get into the elementary and grade 5 math program. So when we say elementary math program, we're actually saying K to 5 because it includes that whole that grade level as well. So it's the Bridges math program. Wireless improvements at the stadium and just some other miscellaneous items that we discussed throughout. So roughly looking at it right now, we're about $39,675,656 at this time for anticipated expenses. We're about $37,641,183. This, at this time, does include the adjusted Act 1 index of 5.5 in this particular model, as we continue to recommend that to you at this time. Just some high-level budget projections to date. Our deficit at this particular time is about $2,034,973, or 2.1 if you want to round. Some historical tax millage review. We went over that prior. And multi-county considerations with STEB, the State Tax Equalization Bureau. And it's important, and we continue to announce this because millage rates are subject to change every year regardless of a tax increase. Because we're in a multi-county school district operating in both Perry and Dauphin counties, we're required to balance each year our millage rates using that baseline method. And they're sensitive to both assessed values and market values that we get from both Perry and Dauphin counties. It's important to note that any of the new assessment is not on this particular school year. And as a school district, we cannot increase any revenue from the assessed values. any increased revenue has to come from a tax increase or a millage increase enacted by you, the board. So that will require us to rebalance. If I said that accurately. Anticipated, this also came, this is a good little graphic that I cut this one out too. This one's anticipated actions due to budget pressures. So this is what schools across Pennsylvania said they're going to do or thinking about doing if in fact, because of the budgetary pressures that they face. Well, this is what we do. 73% said we're going to raise local property taxes. Others are going to draw from fund balance again. Well, that's again what we're doing or recommending. 43.6% are postponing needing renovations and maintenance, and 32.8% unfortunately are not filling some positions. And the other two are not options at this particular time, thankfully. So May preliminary budget, the Pennsylvania School Code allows for a reduction in millage from the preliminary budget to the final budget, but not an increase. So going in, looking at the preliminary budget, would allow, if you included the Act 1 index, you could always remove it by the final budget. But if you wanted to take it off the table for the preliminary budget, then there's no adding it for the final budget. All right. The next one is another good presentation. We're going to dive into this one. This one really breaks it down into some larger buckets and breaks it down into where that percentage of spending is. You want to help me on this one?
Sure.
Thanks.
So, yeah, does she have, okay.
Yeah, he's good.
All right, so this is just a more of a summary level. A lot of it repeats what he does. I just break it down into a little bit smaller numbers than what Dr. Fox did. As he mentioned, the overall budget currently shows a deficit of 2.1 million. All right, revenue being 37.6, expense being 39.7. If you jump to the revenue tab, it actually breaks it down a little bit. The local revenue, which is our real estate and property taxes, accounts for 19 million of the 37.6, or 51%. State revenue is 18 million, or 48%, and we get a whole 1%, or 0.6 million from the federal revenue. So, I mean, really looking at that, I know the only controllable that we have here is the real estate or the local portion of it. And what that constitutes is, 0% or 5.5% is really only a $370,000 increase. So our 2.1 would go to 2.4, 2.5 if we didn't take the Act 1 increase into effect. Breaking it into the expenditures, it really comes from, a couple main buckets. Labor being the big one, so the total of 30.9.7. 14.4 million of that is in just the labor and wages, so that's 36% of the total. If you go to the next slide, it talks about the retirement and benefits. That's another 9.6, or 24%. So 60% of our budget really comes from, labor and benefits. Breaks it down a little bit there more between, the retirement of Peasers being at 34%, and then some of the other, the medical, prescription, dental, and all that being another 4.8. So it just goes into a little bit deeper dive on the expenditures. The last slide is just the one that we continue to talk about, the 3.5 million, or 9% of our budget that goes toward the charter school. So that's 69% of our budget right there. I know we spent a lot of time talking about the detail and the other 31%, but this is a piece that is is not easily controlled. It's what we have to do to operate the building. So I think that's all I had. Then the last one is just a little different timeline about the preliminary budget being voted on in the May, and 30-day window for the public to view it before it goes final in June.
Thank you, Mr. Browse. I think you did a great job.
This slide on the breaking down of the salary and benefits thing. I just wanted to see. So 24% is retirement and benefits, and then that's of the total budget? And then what is the one, but the slide before. 36, okay.
Did you have any more questions, Leanne?
Nope, thank you.
So when I met with the superintendent and Jonathan, we talked about, setting the agenda for next week's meeting. And I thought maybe we could start, to think about voting on this early. But we can't really vote on it until May because once the board approves it, certain things kick into place with submissions to PDE or whatever. So we're going to vote on this at the May meeting. But I think we, tonight, since this is a caucus meeting, should discuss what we want to vote on as far as approving this budget. The administration is recommending that we raise taxes to the Act 1 index level. So I don't know if we want to put it on as one vote to raise taxes to that level, if that will have full board support or not, or whether we want to do something like we did last year, which was to have it at the total level of the Act 1 index, and then we had one that had kind of in the middle, and then we had one where no increase in taxes whatsoever. So I think it behooves us tonight to have a little bit of a discussion so we have an idea of where the board might be in regards to how we might vote to approve this budget.
If I had my druthers, I'd rather do the second choice that you came up with rather than the first one, just giving a carte blanche. That's just my thought.
My thinking, and this may be surprising, is I can't vote for any tax increase at all as long as we have $19 million in reserve, personally. We have some of that, like 3.5 is restricted, the rest is committed, but, I've shared this before. So I don't think I see myself voting for any tax increase at this point when we have that amount of money in the reserves. That's where I'm standing.
I would tend to agree.
We need to give the superintendent direction as to what we want put on the agenda for the May meeting. So,
Speak up, people.
So in essence, in May, we're voting for the approval of the budget and how to make up for the difference.
or not. Yeah, we vote to approve the budget and whether or not there's going to be an increase in taxes or not. I don't know if that's two separate votes or one vote. Usually, I think we've combined them in the past.
Yeah, I think they're typically interchangeable of each other, but I think in May, what you're doing is you're approving the preliminary budget. And if I may, you're exactly right. If there is no tax increase, wanting to prepare that budget, then the final budget is pretty simplified because nothing can be added. If you vote at the preliminary budget with any tax increase, in June's budget, you can change it. So you can always reduce it by June, but you cannot add it after May.
You're not, correct me if I'm wrong, you're not talking about adding or subtracting things to the budget. You're talking about adding or subtracting a tax increase.
That's correct.
Okay.
Which would add or subtract revenue from the budget, so.
That's correct.
Correct.
And Jim, since you were the only one that wasn't here last year for that vote, that's essentially what happened last year. We voted in the preliminary budget for one level and then adjusted that level at the final budget vote in June. So whatever we do in May, as Dr. Fox mentioned, to the preliminary budget is not binding until we vote on the final budget in June. But if we don't vote at all for any kind of a potential increase in May, you cannot add any increase in June. you can only take it away. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I was just confused, because I was part of the vote that we increased taxes this past year.
You were here for that? Oh, okay, I didn't think you were.
But.
You might have
but-
just started then, I
But
guess.
didn't we raise those taxes anticipating each year our budget expanding, and now that number has fallen short?
Every year, our budget, sorry, am I? to
Go ahead.
Every year, our budget deficit has fallen around 1.5 to 2.5 million dollars. We build a budget with that kind of a deficit. Fortunately, because of either increased revenue that we get from the state, because we build the budget with flat state funding, which I think is prudent. If we get increases from the state, or we don't spend as much as we thought, we end up not having to, we don't have as big of a deficit as we thought. So 2 years ago, it was supposed to be 2.1. We ended up at 86,000 in deficit. This year, we were at $1.5 million deficit. We don't know yet till this year is done. But whatever we are below, we'd have to pull out of fund balance. So we are building a budget right now at a $2 million deficit with a $300,000 tax increase built in. If we decide to not raise taxes, then we would have a $2.3 million deficit for our budget. And we just have to wait and see what happens with state funding or what might come in, how that will actually end up at the end of the year. If we don't end up with any money extra, we'd have to pull that 2.3 out of our general fund balance, which, as Dr. Jones mentioned, is sitting at $19 million right now, which is why there was some discussion from Dr. Jones about not raising the tax.
And I know we know this, but I think it bears repeating. This current budget is based on the state funding and the federal funding being the same as it was the year before, assuming that we will have no additional state funds, no additional federal funds. Common sense in past history tells us the state and the federal government should increase the amount of funds that we receive. But we've created a budget as though that we're not receiving anything from the state and federal government. So if they give us level funding from the year before, we would be looking at this type of deficit. So to ask my original question another way, I'm asking the superintendent to put on the agenda that we approve the current budget without a tax increase. So I guess what I need is, do any other board members wish to have something else put on as a motion for when we vote? If you do, now would be the time to say that, correct?
Yeah, and we also have some discussion at May's caucus too,
Correct.
which is another area. But yeah, I think these are really good discussion points because our runaway is getting shorter.
I guess I'll interject. I'm at a strong I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at. I think, I don't know. I don't know my answer yet. So I think if we had to vote right now, because I don't know, I'd probably go with what we did last year, putting in the amount in May for the prelim. So I'd have more time to kind of jockeying around in my head before the June final budget.
So I'm assuming next week during board discussion items, we could bring this up to discuss further, and definitely it can be brought up to discuss further at the May caucus meeting as well. I'm not sure personally what other information will come to light, but I understand where you're coming from.
I would agree with Leanne. I was in that seat last year. I lobbied hard for the Act 1 increase. We met somewhere in the middle. But my big reason for feeling as you feel is it doesn't hurt anything to put it in there in May and then talk ourselves out of it for June. It does put a little bit extra work on them. But I think at this point, Mr. Browse has come to expect that from us in the short time he's been here. So take from that what you will, but I believe you understand that I would say present that as the preliminary budget that's been shown to us, and then if we change our minds, if we feel like we're going to continue to be in the place where we project a 2 point something million dollar deficit, and then the annual audit comes back and shows us that we were only, 100,000 off, if that continues to happen, which has in the past couple of years, then maybe we stop considering putting the tax increase in there. However, I feel like the moment we do that, it will probably come back to bite us. But yeah, anyhow, long story short, I would propose that we put on the agenda a motion to approve that preliminary budget as already presented, and then modify before final approval in June.
Like put it in with the.
Yes.
With the increase at Act 1 total?
Yes. Preliminary budget as presented, which was presented to us with
Okay.
with the Act 1 increase. And then in June, if we all collectively have had discussion and decided we are comfortable pulling any necessary funds to balance from the reserves, then in June, upon final approval, we change it.
In June, we could go anywhere between 0 and.
Or, yeah, we could go the whole way to 0, we could just, yes, or anywhere in the middle. However, like they've continued to stress, we don't put something in there for an increase in a preliminary, you can't put anything in there for the final, so.
I would not object actually to that at all, other than the fact that I want to be very transparent that I would be not voting for that. I just want to be very clear and not mislead in any way. Yeah.
And I'd like to clarify too, sort of why I'm waffling, because as many of you may recall, last year, I petitioned for that middle of the road tax increase full well expecting that I would vote for one this year. And the only reason I'm waffling is because of the ballooning, for lack of a better word, of our general fund budget by $4 million because of money that was moved by our auditor from wherever. And I know, so I'm struggling to increase taxes to give us $300 and some thousand when we just added $4 million to our fund budget, which I think is maybe where Dr. Jones is coming from as well. So I'm trying to grapple with where that is futuristically in terms of what might happen with the Act 1 index in the future. I think you mentioned, Mr. Browse, that the Act 1 index projection for future is going to be much lower. So the opportunity to increase taxes later on may not be there to bring any kind of robust addition to our budget. So that's why I'm waffling, because we've got extra money in the fund budget that we didn't know about, and we've got an Act 1 index that's starting its trend downward, and how we might manage moving forward in a budgetary cycle that is a little bit unpredictable.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you very much. And the good news is we do have a little bit more time at May's caucus to talk about this, but it gives us a good direction to begin that preliminary planning for May's board meeting. So thank you, everybody.
Would it be possible to see the data like we did last year too, of what each tax increase may look like to a homeowner?
Yeah, we can try to work on that, absolutely. Yeah, I did. Unfortunately, I did skip the curriculum update. So it's a good update right now, and then a good segue into our next, which is our math program presentation. So thank you very much. Sorry about that.
Awesome. Thanks, Dr. Fox. Just a few curriculum updates to share. In front of you, I did give you a copy of our draft right now, Professional Learning Trade Day catalog for you to take a look at. I like to present this before we send it out to the staff, which we're planning on doing by April 11th. So we still have a little more work to put into this, some more sessions that are coming in, some different things we want to add, but for the most part, you can get an idea as to how this is shaping up for the summer. So as always, if you see anything, any glaring issues or things you want to share or add, please let us know, because we still are working on this in draft form, and we hope to get it out very soon to everybody. So we give them some time to actually sign up for the summer trade days, which we have 3 of available this summer. Also, I want to make sure to mention, we have a very big event happening next week at the elementary school, our kindergarten registration on April 9th and 10th. So I know they're shaking their heads. They've worked so hard on this. This is an event that is just taken months to prepare for. So we will be welcoming all of our youngest learners coming in to the district, their families. So we're really looking forward to that. So that is next Thursday and Friday, April 9th and 10th. As Dr. Fox mentioned earlier, I do have a few curriculum approvals for next week's board meeting, and I did send an email out to you all this morning, just kind of pointing you in the right direction if you get a moment to take a look at those maps. We have Algebra 2, most of our high school English, 9 through 12, and our AP courses, and we have one last food and consumer science course for advanced culinary, so we'll finish that as well. I also would be remiss if I didn't mention that this month we also have PSSAs, which are starting directly after our spring break. So Tuesday, April 22nd, we will be kicking off testing in our elementary and our middle school, and that will run up through May 2nd. Okay, and then we'll kind of take a little breather, and then we'll jump into Keystone exams towards the middle of May. So if you have any questions, those are my updates that I have, but I know the trade day catalog's a little large, so it might take you a little bit to weed through that. Yes.
I'll raise my hand.
Love it.
2 questions. Do we have any idea of numbers for kindergarten registration? Like, what are we looking at? Do we have?
We have 94 so far
Yep.
registered, and the nice thing is this year, I know Mrs. Matosh worked with our registration district office so that all their paperwork most of it had to be pushed in ahead of time before they could actually sign up. So it's going to really help cut down the process, but we have 94 so far.
So is that what they think is going to be the size of that incoming kindergarten? No, that's what I was
We
wondering.
always
like
have
how
more
ma-
coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, last year we had 136.
Okay.
And then we always anticipate over the summer, probably another 50 will come in and trickle in.
Okay, cool. And then the other question I had was, and this was, I think Mr. Shepler kind of tackled me after our little gathering here, and he's super excited about Lifted. And so he mentioned to me, but he said he was kind of encouraging the board for any board members that might be available that day to come and attend. And I know those that are working outside the home and have a regular work day, that might be difficult, but he's planning to at least extend an invitation to all of us, but they're very excited he's excited, and I think the whole team that's planning it again is excited about the difference, or maybe the changes or improvements that made from one year to the next, but yeah, so I don't know if you have anything else you want to say about that?
Not only to attend, but if anyone wants to present as well. We would certainly take any board member that would want to present to the educators.
Present based on what?
Well,
What are you
last
looking?
year, Mrs. Mulhorn did a presentation. So we have different tracks, and I can definitely share that with anyone who might be interested to see if it's something that you would want to do.
Okay. Well, I don't know. I guess I'm asking is, would it be based on as a board member presentation or as our career presentation? That's, I guess, what I'm asking. You want me to bring blood and fling it around? Is that what you're asking?
I mean,
That would.
the audience is educators.
Okay.
So it would have to, right, your career would have to somehow relate to an education, teaching and learning.
Okay. I'll think about that.
I like it.
Okay. Can you smell it burning a little bit?
We can smell it burning. Awesome. Well, if there's no other questions, we are super excited, not to end the evening, but to end the evening on this note with the math program presentation. I think it's definitely been a labor of love, for everyone involved over the last year. It's been a year of hard work, a lot of reflection, a lot of research, and just kind of coming together. A lot of discussions, just lengthy discussions on what is best for our students. So I think that's really the number one thing that we would like to talk to you about tonight. So I know Mrs. Walsman, Ms. Lang, and Mr. Ward, you guys have graciously offered to kind of take different parts of this and share your thoughts. So we're really excited to kick it off.
Well, you're stealing my thunder a little bit. I was going to introduce, and that was my part.
However,
I did want to take
Mr.
this opportunity
Ward.
to just put one more plug out there for the Susquenita Blackhawk Foundation with our Sportsman's Raffle. We're having that drawing in this room on Saturday this week. Anybody that wants some last-minute tickets, make sure you get a hold of me, kward@susquenita.org, or just stop into the elementary school office, and I'll be sure to get you the tickets that you'd like. But like what Ms. Snyder said, this has been a long time coming. It's been a long process. You see 4 names up there, but I'm going to be honest with you. There's 2 names on there that have really put the hard work and the grit into this and really narrowing this down, taking that collaborative and systematic approach of trying to determine which program might fit our school at the elementary school and the middle school 5th grade program as well. And I just want to recognize Ms. Lang, our data instruction specialist, and Mrs. Walsman as well for putting in that really, really hard work, starting way back in the fall, reaching out to different companies, really starting to do that research, breaking things down. Like I said, keeping that collaborative approach, keeping the administration in the loop, keeping the teachers in the loop, working with the middle school as well, and just really doing a fantastic job, really getting this narrowed down to the point where I don't want to I don't want to step on anybody's toes, but taking to the point where we know what our students' needs are, and we really broke it down and tried to find those programs that would fit our students' needs, just not looking at any old program out there. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over, I believe, to Mrs. Walsman.
Just kidding, to me. So we started with a timeline just to give you an idea of everything that we looked at. Starting in late winter, early spring of 24, we knew that our My Math was coming to an end. We needed to find a replacement for it. We started by talking with McGraw-Hill, the publisher of My Math. Their recommendation was some of their new programs coming out, because My Math is a program that's being discontinued, was Reveal, that it seemed to have some of the pieces that we would need to fit, some of the concerns that we had with My Math, in their opinion, had been resolved in Reveal. And we found 2 teachers at each grade level who agreed to pilot Reveal for the 24-25 school year. Over the summer, those teachers and myself and Mrs. Walsman went to training. We learned how to utilize Reveal, the structure of Reveal, and kind of got to know it so that it then could be launched in those, what ended up being 9 classrooms in the fall of 24. We met repeatedly with teachers and checked in with teachers to see how they were feeling about it, how students were responding to it, to give some comparison and some feedback with My Math. We started to hear pieces where it really wasn't working for everybody and didn't seem like it was going to be the program that would fit our need as nicely as we had hoped. So by late fall, early winter, we really started reviewing additional programs to look into to see what might better fit our needs. We looked into Math, Bridges, iReady Classroom, Eureka Squared, Tang Math, Illustrative Math, and we also reviewed what our building needs were for a new math program, and that will be coming up in a couple of slides. In November, we got the support of teachers and admin and really came up with what our students needed, what our administration needed, and what our teachers needed to be able to best support our students with math. We did turn it into an evaluation rubric that then helped guide some of the pieces that we're looking at as we were reviewing in depth the programs that I previously listed. December and January, we really took a deep dive. We were looking for manipulative use, a spiral structure, conceptual teaching, problem solving, an approach that had game-based practice, and interventions, and some other pieces. So we definitely had programs that didn't meet our needs in that way, and we didn't need to investigate those programs any further. We discussed each of the programs, the research. We narrowed it down really into our top 2. Mrs. Walsman did a great job compiling some data on the programs, how they were structured, and development pieces with that. So then we discussed as a team, and then we also discussed with representatives from Bridges and from Eureka to get to know the programs better, to get some additional pieces and information into our hands. In February, we presented Bridges materials to teachers. We had materials that were laid out that they were welcome to come and investigate independently. And then we had one 45-minute session with them kind of presenting the philosophies behind Bridges and allowing them to ask questions and further investigate. And then they had additional time after that to continue to review materials, and then there was a survey that they were to fill out to give the team some more feedback on how they were feeling about Bridges, supports that they might need in what they had seen, and any questions. February through now, we've reviewed materials that would be included in the Bridges program, as well as pieces that we would have to supplement. We surveyed the teachers, we reviewed the results, we've discussed some professional development and ways that we can really support implementation of this new program. When we were having our pilot discussion, some of the pieces that came to light as needs for our district, in no particular order, fact fluency, so really helping ensure that our students are mastering their basic operational fluency, number identification fluency, which allows higher level thinking to happen when they have that fluency, so it is an essential piece of math instruction. We wanted a program that had strong estimation and number sense. Several teachers are noting that this is something that students struggle with across all grade levels. Standard algorithms were sometimes emphasized too early, and there was a lack of conceptual understanding. This was occurring in several of the programs, so we really wanted something that built on conceptual understanding, and it took kids through a conceptual, representational, abstract model to deepen their thinking and their understanding about math. We needed something that had a spiral review nature to it. We do have a somewhat transient population, and so this allows those skills to be revisited repeatedly to strengthen students' ability and really get them to gain those skills. It also reviews previous skills in a very sequential manner for students. Going with the approach to teaching, we knew we wanted something that was very hands-on. We needed something that had manipulative use, it had interactive elements, and additionally, we needed something that would have some intervention and some remedial supports to help with our struggling learners. Our previous program didn't really have anything that was supporting our students in this way, in the way that we need them to moving forward.
Just have a quick question. So when you're saying that the stuff is limited, is that limited in the current program we're using now, or the one that you were looking at as the initial replacement?
So we were looking at the current program we were using now, and then when we were reviewing each of those programs, we were seeing those lacks within those programs
Those
also.
two. Okay, great, thank you.
So not only did we take an understanding of what the teachers were saying to us, but we took a deep dive into the data that we had as a district. District PVAS data is showing a consistent decline in our math scores for 3rd and 4th grade because those are our tested subjects. And we are also in a district comprehensive plan, TSI designation for math. We also noted again our student population needs. We have a transient population, so we have students that are coming in and out of the district. So they're coming in with, we don't know what gaps they need, and then we're trying to fill them, and we know that we need to be able to spiral our instruction to make sure that we're meeting those needs. We know that our district has a low socioeconomic status population, so these are students that may not have all of the access to educational processes outside of school. We may be the only point of education and academics. And then we really took into consideration, we had some very deep discussions about the Reveal pilot, but that also then went into My Math and past programs that we have used, and really looked at what we have been missing over the years, because we wanted to fill that gap. So we used curriculum driving questions when we were investigating the various programs that were coming out. So our biggest questions were, is it spiral or mastery based? And again, for our needs, we needed that spiral. Mastery is that you master that skill and then you move onto that and you never come back to that. There's some pros about that, but in a population in our need, it is not going to be helpful. We're going to lose more and more students that way. Is it based on primary or conceptual math instruction? I know Ms. Lang touched on that area. Does it utilize hands-on manipulatives for instruction? That was a big thing that was coming from our teachers, that they need more hands-on visualization of the math concepts. Is it CRA development? What approach is used for word problems? That was another big lack. We are seeing in our programs that we're giving the kids lots of word problems, but we don't have the strategies to attack those word problems. Then does it incorporate games or means of practice? And I do want to put up here, this isn't stick them on an iPad game. These are interactive games that we can do with cards and game boards that they can interact with. How does it support vocabulary instruction? That was one that the teachers came back with multiple times. We need to have them have that vocabulary instruction. They need to know what an add-in is. They need to know what the denominator or numerator is. And then, is there intervention included? That was another area, is when we would have students identified in the classroom for just tier 1 intervention, we did not have a way to support remediation within the classroom. So again, Ms. Lang had gone over our programs that we were investigating: Eureka Squared, Bridges Math, Into Math, iReady, Tang. And we looked at these different areas. In the very bottom corner, you can see we developed a spreadsheet that we were just constantly, after our discussions, filling in the information. And it was broken down of those categories you see up there of were those programs fulfilling those categories, or were they not fulfilling those categories? So in the end, we came to the conclusion of Bridges in Mathematics. It was a program that ticked all of our boxes and really became a program that we have become very passionate about. So to give you a little information, because this is not a typical what we call big box curriculum. It's not, it is in our area, but it's not well known like some of the larger curriculum bases out there. So Bridges Math is a curriculum, and it was developed by the Math Learning Center. It was actually developed by math instructors. It was started as a nonprofit organization focused on improving math instruction and making math accessible to all students. It was actually created through the National Science Foundation. The core philosophy centered on deep conceptual understanding, use of those visual models, and that hands-on based learning. So why Bridges? Again, there was that focus on conceptual understanding and visual models, and that was one of our key areas that we wanted to focus on. This was pioneered by Dr. Eugene Mayer, who is a co-founder of MLC. It has inquiry-based learning for our math. So the big emphasis with Bridges is that student-centered learning. And you're going to, Ms. Lang's going to take you through some of the portions and sections of Bridges to kind of give you a better understanding of what that looks like in the classroom. So it's encouraging our students to explore and reason mathematically. It's a comprehensive curriculum, and it's ongoing in development. So they've already run through Bridges 1, Bridges 2, and now this is the latest version, which is Bridges 3.
Just to add on to the inquiry-based learning piece also, inquiry-based learning in math is a little bit different than science. Science, you can give them that driving question and let them explore and see where they get to. In math, you give them the pieces that they need first, and then you give them something to explore with those pieces. So if you're familiar with inquiry-based, it does look slightly different in math. But there are 6 big ideas to a Bridges math lesson. The first one is that you are developing a community of learners. So your students are working together, they're supporting each other, you are the coach of those learners, but you really want your entire team working together. It's not a matter of this kiddo gets it and this one is struggling. If I can help you, I'm gonna jump in and help you. Discourse is absolutely key. So having really deep, meaningful conversations about the mathematics. Why are you doing that? Why did you choose that strategy? How are you showing it? Well, this is what mine looks like, and this is what yours looks like. How are they alike? How are they different? That piece is essential in the math learning. It also incorporates the vocabulary that has to be specific and explicit to math. Modeling is at the heart of all of the lessons. Students will learn several strategies, but they will start with concrete strategies, using manipulatives, modeling the math, seeing how it works, being able to touch it, feel it, move it, manipulate it. They will then move into representational, usually involving drawings, and then they will move into the standard algorithm, which is what most of us in this classroom learned when we learned our various math. It's very strategy driven, and it gears students towards finding the strategy that works for them. So if I pick one strategy and Mrs. Welsman picked another strategy, but we can use them accurately and get the right answer, that's celebrated in the classroom. It's not trying to force all of the students into one strategy. It's letting them use their strengths to find their best path forward. It is very student-centered. The student conversation, the student modeling, the strategy use, the explanation, it puts a lot of the learning and justification back on the student. It is not the teacher being the sage on a stage. It really is that coach from the side helping to guide the students to get where we need them to be. And justifying their thinking is another huge piece of that, which you've kind of heard me talk about. But they have to justify their reasoning. It's not just the answer is 32 because that's what I think it is. You need to be able to tell me how you got there. When I break down the parts of a Bridges math lesson, it first starts with the number corner, which is the first 20 minutes of the math lesson, and this can be separated out from the other lesson. It is a physical location in the room because there's a display that goes with it. It is based on the calendar. Each calendar is different per grade level per month, and it changes. There's a pattern that gets put up. And it's very conversational around what that pattern is. That pattern is a math pattern that relates to previous learning that the students have had, and it anchors them and prepares them for a unit that's coming up in the following month. So if they're going to move into adding fractions in February, January, they might be looking at a fraction pattern with naming different fractions. The board features the calendar. There are usually anchor charts that go with it. It is added to daily. Students are adding the data to that board as well. They have a piece in this presentation. It's not just something that the teacher presents and it stays stagnant. It's an active changing piece of the daily instruction. One thing to make this successful is looking at our schedule for next year. Administratively, we knew we had to block that number corner time in, ideally in the beginning of the day. So we're working on that piece also. After number corner, students move into the main piece of their lesson. It starts with a warm-up. The warm-ups are short. They're designed to set the stage for a larger investigation. Lots of times these are geared towards number sense. So it's building that number sense. They are a low floor, high ceiling task, so they have an easy entry point for all students, but they can really be extended for those higher level students. A lot of them are routine based, so once you get the students into the routine, they learn it. So I have an example up of which one doesn't belong, and students can debate and discuss why which of those shapes doesn't belong with the other three. As you can see, there are multiple correct answers. So it's not about finding one correct answer, it's about engaging everybody and that conversation and that vocabulary use. Next, there is a problem and an investigation portion. So this starts with a whole group lesson. It's incorporated with pieces of independent work or partner work. The teacher will present information and then put responsibilities back on the students and then come back together again. So this is the more traditional piece that we've seen in some programs. But again, students are still modeling and doing the math during this portion. It is not open your book to page 42 and we're going to do page 42 today. So they continue to investigate, to think they'll work independently with partners. They then come back together and you share responses the students come up with, you compare strategies and what solutions you came up with as an entire class. So you can see how that opens up the conversation to how students got their answers and teachers being very strategic in supporting students to share their thinking and justify their thinking. The next piece is small group work, which includes workplaces. Workplaces are engaging math stations. They offer ongoing skill practice for students. Like Mrs. Walsman said, they are not digital games. They are physical game boards sitting in front of the students. Some utilize pieces or puzzle pieces, dice, game boards. There is a whole collection of materials that come with the program for these workplaces. They are an essential part of the program. This is where kids are getting that repeated practice with the skill that they can do independently or with a partner. Some of them are more open-ended tasks, so then you would be able to see more open-ended responses from students. One really nice piece that the program does is they incorporate teaching students how to play the games in the whole group setting first before it's asking them to do it independently. So it really supports the classroom management aspect of running small groups in your classroom and being able to get students to engage independently and work independently while you then have the ability to work with another small group on an intervention, a remediation, whatever it might be that that small group of students needs. These games are also revisited over a period of time, so it brings those skills back and extends that practice over time. The resources that we will have access to will be the number corner materials. It includes all of the calendar pieces, pictures of anchor charts that teachers can use. There is a student workbook that goes with that they can complete pages of together. There is a student workbook that we will have consumables of as well that match with each grade level's main lesson. The teacher's manual will be a physical teacher's manual, but teachers will also have access to the digital manual online. All of the work mats and center activities will be included. Again, we also have digital access if something were to get lost, misplaced, water bottle spilled on, all of the things that happen, we can reprint that item that we would need. There is a home connection book that could be used as a homework piece. We will have digital access to that. Right now, we are not looking at purchasing the physical copies of the home connection, but teachers would have access if they needed to use pieces of that. And intervention kits, the really nice part of this program is they have 2 separate intervention kits, a level 1 with some earlier skills and a level 2 with some later skills. These will be utilized in our math intervention classroom as well as our special ed classrooms. All teachers, however, will have access to all of these pieces digitally. So it does allow everybody access to that. The printed, ready-to-go pieces will be in those specialized classrooms. Special ed is based on the grades that they supervise to know which level of intervention program they're receiving.
Going back to the timeline, we had a day that teachers were able to come through their planning time in our conference room and actually go through the digital online version of their manuals and some printed copies. That way we could then provide them with a survey to get information back from our teachers. That was critical. We wanted teacher input from the beginning, and we wanted it throughout our time because they're the ones on the forefront of this. They see the needs right there in their classrooms, and we want to be able to hear their voices. So this was really a great resource for us to understand. A lot of the feedback we got was very positive. A lot of the teachers were very excited about this program. The biggest need they shared across the board would be time. Sorry, would be time. I'll just keep going. Would be time to go through the materials and learn each of the pieces.
It's work.
It's working? Okay. Close or not close? Close. Okay. I'm not feeling too good, so somebody spray this down afterwards then, please. So it was a really critical piece to have is that teacher feedback. It was very positive, and the big thing is getting that time. That's what they shared. The other piece that took a lot of time to do is find out what we have as resources in our building. Last summer, I went through our building and every closet I could. If there were manipulatives in curriculum that we were not using, I compiled it all into one room so we could actually take inventory of it. So what we did was send out an inventory list. Bridges actually put together a list of everything kindergarten would need, from crayons to paper to tape. And then we sent that out and said, what do we already have in the building? So that we're not buying things again that we already have from 3 or 4 curriculums that we've already gone through. That was extremely helpful to know, and it also helped us that maybe some of these things, like they need painter's tape, it was something that none of our teachers budgeted for. So it kind of gave us an idea of, okay, these things we have, but these things are going to be we're going to need to go out and purchase. So all K through 5 teachers filled this out, and we were able to compile more information about our needs and what we already have.
So based on the survey and our discussions as a team, we wanted to start kind of planning out what we thought our professional development vision would be as if we were going to adopt this program. It is a big change from our current program, and it is, I think, a big lift for some of our teachers to move to something that teaches math in this essential way. So over the summer, we are looking at getting materials into students' hands as soon as we possibly can so that they can look at it, organize it, all of those pieces. Running professional development sessions specifically around Number Corner and around strategy use, strategy implementation for students. We also have 2 Bridges professional development sessions, asynchronous and synchronous options that we're looking at. This professional development is included for us in the price of our Bridges program. There is also an administrative PD that the administration team would take so that we can best support our teachers as they take on a lot of the lift of this new program. In the fall, we would want to run professional development on manipulative use, on assessment, formative, progress monitoring, and summative. There is an additional Bridges professional development session and administration session that would run after those initial sessions, after the teachers have had some experience in the program, but still very early in their experience with the program. In the winter, we would look at increasing our family support and engagement, getting pieces together for them. We do know that some of the pieces, some of the language, some of the strategies are going to be new to them, so we also want to support our families as we adopt this new program. We would want a success showcase at staff meetings where staff members could share the things that were working really well in their classrooms and continue to try and support each other as we learn from each other and continue to grow. There is another data-informed professional development session, so kind of looking at the data that we have, and another administrative professional development session supporting with data and other aspects of implementation. Ongoing, we would be looking at monthly team meetings to share glows and grows, things that were working well, places where teams are struggling, team planning, and kind of progress review to see how students are progressing, which would tie in nicely with our MTSS process and really monitoring where students are on their continuum of learning.
During this process, Dr. Fox asked a really good question on what does success look like. If we were to go through this process in a few months within the year, how could we begin to tell that this is showing success within our classrooms in our school? So some of the areas that we would look into is, number one, increased in Acadian scores. Acadians is our database that helps us understand the growth that students are showing in ELA and math. So we would look at our math scores and really track about that growth that's happening within the classrooms. We would have progress discussions linked to specific students' skills and needs. Discourse. So you're going to, one thing that we've heard of districts that have had this, within that first year, they said that the amount of student discourse that is happening, even in the kindergarten classrooms, is really amazing, because this program makes students talk about math and understand it in that way. They have to justify why they're doing what they're doing. So you would be able to walk into a classroom and see that discourse going on. And then deeper understanding of the progress monitoring data, really digging into that and understanding the skills that we are seeing growth, especially in areas that we already know are gaps, to see that growth happening. I do want to tell you that this really led from a passion of Ms. Lang and I for not only math but curriculum in general, and making sure that our teachers have a curriculum that they feel successful in and that our students truly meets their needs. So we went through a lot of information, but it really came from a passion that we have for teaching, coming back from as teachers. So it was something that we just were really energetic about doing.
And we know we always have to talk about cost, what this looks like for the district. Definitely tried to break it down. Year one is that bigger cost where you're getting all of the materials sent to you from the company. And then of course, in years 2 through 5, that's where you're getting your consumables, the things that are sent to you on a yearly basis. And I know we had an excellent question, Mrs. Singley, you asked that at one of our budget meetings, whether or not this is something that could be put into a yearly budget at the building level and what that would look like. Again, that's something that's always an option. We just aren't able to guarantee that consumable price from year to year. So if it's something we purchase together, years 2 through 5, we know what we're paying for each of those. So that's just my only thought with that. It doesn't mean it'll increase, but I just wouldn't know, from year to year until I would get that price.
So are you saying that if we purchased everything on the front end, if you divided that by 5, it would be $25,000 a
Right.
year. If we do it the way that you have the first listing,
Right.
it would be 91,000 plus 35 for years 2 through 5.
Right.
I see what you're saying. So
It's just another way to look
Yeah,
at it as an
I'm just-
option, and I wish I could give some guaranteed, prices of what those consumables will look like. I know in talking to another area district, trying to learn more about the program and their implementation, those prices have stayed pretty consistent over the last couple of years, looking at what they paid. So it's just something to think about.
this is just maybe for Jason or for, from a money standpoint. So let's just say this time we purchase it at the front end, we just front load it. Is there any way that we could build a line item moving forward though into the budget so that when the next round comes up, we're not just faced with 125,000 at one time? I don't know if that's something we can do or not. Do you understand what I'm asking?
I do understand what you're asking.
Okay.
I think we are going to be talking relatively soon about ELA programs on the need. Probably, again, I can't speculate until we dig deeper. But based on that cycle and when certain programs are no longer being supportive or that contract ends, that will shift here next year. But I think what you're saying is as we continue, we get math, ELA, and as there continues to be needs, to put a placeholder in for materials, supplies, and curriculum, and then that continues to be.
To build, well, yeah, just so that we're not, you know what I mean? Because the last time we did an ELA program, and I vividly remember this because it was right before COVID, it was, a $350,000 purchase. And obviously we needed it, but it would be nice to not have to be faced with that big 350 drop in 1 year if we could start to sort of save over and just kind of build it in as a placeholder. And so maybe this one, we buy straight out, but moving forward, can we put a placeholder in of $25,000 a year? So in 5 years, when we need to replace it again, we've got that money saved?
Well,
I don't know if we can do that.
I understand what you're saying. I think that's, yes, I understand completely the theories of it, but it all is going to go into fund balance, and fund balance, while we're still running a negative deficit budget, will be utilizing fund balance. So
We put it in fund balance, though, and commit it to curriculum?
yeah,
That's interesting.
yes.
I think it's more like we budget $300,000 a year for curriculum, and then as she works on a curriculum cycle, she tries to build in those that she knows that are going to be more expensive with those that are going to be least expensive throughout the years. So she knows that that's this, so that she knows she has roughly, I'm just throwing this out, $300,000, whether it's language arts that year, whether that's math that year, whether it's high school science. That's what we used to do once upon a time. And then we got the iPads and we're told all curriculum would be free because our teachers would write their own curriculum. Instead, we're buying technology. But that's what we used to do, and that worked. And to do that, you have to have a curriculum cycle, which we're working on.
Yeah, I think from a larger perspective, as we continue talking about budgets and budget philosophies, if that's an area or we want to add, it's certainly something we can continue to talk about.
Definitely. And I wanted to make sure also to bring up when we were talking about pricing, just kind of some of that fluctuation that we've seen, because again, it is very difficult, especially when you're looking at multiple programs and they all have different things to offer. They have different pricing structures, different things that are needed. I know, that we've been looking at the budget at the last several meetings, and that original number kind of came up about 6-7 months ago when we were looking at some different things. So yes, it is a little higher than what we originally predicted, but this program, I don't want to say it surprised us, but as we kind of moved through and we're really learning about it, it really, this is the one that is fitting our need the best. So I wanted to make sure just to bring up that fall estimate really kind of came out from some averages, definitely coming out from a publisher that we had used in the past, where we would have probably received just maybe a little bit more of a discount. Continuing with them, we were able to pilot materials at no cost as well. So again, those are just where some of those figures came from. Also with Bridges, we kind of had to look a little bit differently at special education costs, just what those teachers needed. And, you know, the fact that the program has that intervention piece as well kind of added that extra layer there that we added in. I also, I mean, this is something that could possibly happen, but as we're looking at the individual building budgets, we're able to look at some line items that we did currently present in the 25-26 budget for approval that just might not be needed, because if we go with this program, we're going to have some other ancillary materials to help us. So again, it's just a thought, you know, to throw out there. You know, it's a little more costly, but as Mrs. Walsman also brought up, that PD piece, you don't see that often that it's included in the price of the program. Usually it's broken out and it's thousands of dollars per session. So that's another plus, which is really, really, you know, helpful for us, that we're able to utilize that piece as well. And again, it's the only math program that we've found that has its own intervention piece that we will be able to utilize.
And truly, one of the things we've identified with PVAS scores and one of the things we've identified with PSSA scores is our weakness in elementary school math. And we've also identified that as a goal in our comprehensive planning. And we've also talked about designing comprehensive curriculum maps. You know, so this will cost a little more money, but it's something we probably need to invest the money in. This is a big area where we need to work on as goals. Seems like you've all been amazingly comprehensive. And I got to say, and Deneen probably remembers this, it wasn't that long ago, the teachers weren't really even consulted about choosing curriculum materials. So, which is just bizarre. But the degree to which the teachers were consulted and bought into and helped us suggest this, I think is powerful and will bring great buy-in.
One thing I wanted to clarify about the cost too is with our current programs, we have to pay for a digital every year. With this, the digital comes with the lifespan of the program. So the only thing we're paying for in the future moving forward are just the consumables.
I agree with Mike. I don't think you could have done anything more comprehensive than was already done on this. So thank you. I really, from our standpoint, I think we all really appreciate the time and effort that was taken to just not find the program, but to find the right program for us. So thank you.
Yeah, and then just to wrap things up, just to talk a little bit about some next steps. So, you know, obviously waiting possible board approval is what we need, but then really kind of digging in with our professional development task force teams really to determine dates for, you know, as the team talked about, PD sessions, the structure of the session rollout. We've even tried to structure extra time for grade levels and teams for math to really focus on that this summer. And then kind of working through that step in that process of ordering materials and just making sure that part of our plan is how do we collect the feedback to have that ongoing conversation, really to tailor that individual teacher and grade level support. So that's going to be a big part of our plan as we move forward.
Do you need board approval before our formal budget's approved in June? So you could start ordering materials? So as in, like, should this be on next week's budget?
I think that,
agenda,
oh, I got
sorry.
you. Yeah, for the board meeting. I think that was we seek your approval. That is the number one thing that we need to move forward. But again, each company's different with how you work with them on ordering materials. I know our budget, you know, with being for 25-26 school years, typically set July 1. That is when we're able to move forward. But there's been some discussions just trying to figure out how to best support the teachers. We can get that online access fairly quick. It's the tangible materials that I think I'd really be trying to work with to try to see what we can do to help us out for our summer sessions.
So to answer your question, yes, I think it does solicit board approval. I think this is one of those major programs that certainly should have board approval because the ultimate responsibility when it comes to curriculum is you, the collective board. I'd like to echo what everybody said and certainly commend. Your passion definitely rings through when it comes to looking and searching, researching, and diving into what is best. And it comes down to what is best for students. And the one thing that echoes, and I want to kind of just restate, it is, and you've mentioned it, and we'll continue to mention it, that it's people over programs. And anytime you put our excellent teachers in the hands of a good program, that's going to breed success over time. And anytime, though, it is one of those where it's not plug and play. You know, it allows the teachers to have that creativity. It allows those teachers to still use some of the incredible work that they've built and to still go ahead, because this is a program, not a curriculum, and our curriculum maps will guide what we do and utilizing that program. And one of the things that I love to hear as well, too, is vocabulary, vocabulary, vocabulary. We sat together in our comprehensive planning, talked about the need for common vocabulary across the board, and I think this will be that nice springhead when we look at that vertical and horizontal alignment and using those common languages and common vocabulary across the board. So our students being able to have that academic discourse and knowing what that common vocabulary is, across the board. So I love it. I think it's great. We just have to continue to provide the time, understand it's going to take some time, understand that patience, and provide that ongoing support where and there's no such thing as perfect. But what's perfect is to care and to try. That's perfect.
Do we have any objections to adding this for board approval to the agenda for next week?
No.
Program for every other subject.
Do they kind of, well, there you go. Thank you. Any questions? Yes, I have one. Is there anything that dovetails to the middle school or beyond with this program, with this company, or?
Well, this does take into 5th grade. Middle school is a really kind of an interesting.
It definitely kind of dovetails into where we get into like different courses and different things. That would be something we would have to research with this program. I know, the focus was on that K-5 band, just trying to see what was, going to work out best for us. So, yeah, it's a thought.
Well, I just think talk about, Scott will probably appreciate this. We talk about giving the athletes, the middle school, the elementary school field hockey players, give them the foundation so that when they get to high school, they get to use all that same stuff. And it would be awesome if there was some way to kind of just have it keep moving on through so that all of that skill set they learn in elementary school is not lost as they get to the middle school.
Yeah, certainly.
Beyond.
You hit on that power of that horizontal and that vertical conversations that we need to continue to bring teachers together across the board to have those conversations and to be aware of the who, what, when, and to have access to those maps too as that planning continues.
Well, I love the idea, just hearing that word discourse and that it empowers students to have the conversation. And I think, as I said earlier, to ask the why, and it doesn't force students to be in a box of you have to learn the concept this way. And so that it actually gives students that if you learn it and can explain it this way, great. And if you can learn it this way and you can explain it, great. But that there's the conversation that everybody can learn it differently but still be correct. And I think that establishes for our students that discourse, and how does that lay the foundation for all of our other subjects, that you can get to the right answer in multiple different ways, and you're not forced to be in one particular box.
All right. Once again, great job. A great job, team. Great research. I think this is really a nice case study. So as we kind of tackle in, any public comment? And we'll take a quick look to see if there's any public comments online. In the interim, while we're researching, any board comments or any?
No comments online.
No, oh, thank you. So, so that's my cue to stop talking. Look forward to seeing you. Yes.
I know I'm just kind of echoing sort of this town hall that we had tonight. I just think It was awesome. I was super excited about how that went down. I would almost be open to doing this more than once in a year. I feel like, I don't know what the rest of the board thinks about, but maybe a beginning of the year, the end of the year kind of thing, so that whatever momentum that might come out of something like this, we could kind of keep it going. I don't know, just a thought.
Thank you.
I would agree, but I also think doing it when it doesn't piggyback to a caucus meeting, because I feel like there was a lot more that they had to say or would say, or that got cut short because of our time constraint to have, other people come in and get started. And I think it was great to see them engage in the dialogue and have those questions, but also be open to hearing back. And I think that's something we could do better moving forward, is really being prepared to offer them some of those explanations and give them the why, for some of those things in some type of follow-up, as to, instead of just, I think what I hear so often, because I said so. This is the way it is because I said so. Well, yeah, well, I mean, and I use it in my own house sometimes. It's like sometimes, but the reality is there may sometimes be those situations where it is, this is the way. But I think also in the real world, teaching them that they have to understand maybe this small concept to do it, but also thinking about the bigger picture, and how does what their small concept do, how is that impacted, or how does that lead to moving forward a whole bigger picture outside of their tiny little window.
I agree, and because I said so.
And then it resurges when they're in college, and you just tell them it's just because I said so.
And that thing, one last thing, and before we can conclude, and then maybe we're done, is I think throwing it back at them, but encouraging them, hey, come up with some ideas and suggestions. That way gets them working, gets them responsible for the answers too. And they also feel like they're being engaged. And just what the whole premise of this, I'm thinking, I wish I had that kind of math when I was a kid. I would be a lot further ahead. I'm just saying it does seem like, and they obviously ate this up. I mean, this was something that I think was a really good move. Thank you, Dr. Fox. I believe it was your idea to start the town hall.
Honestly, the thanks go to you it was one of the goals, and to come out with that idea and to allow yourselves to really take on some really good questions. And kudos to Mr. Funk, Mrs. Matosh, Mr. Shepler, Mrs. Bresci, Mrs. Snyder as well, and just the entire team, because it really, there was a lot of planning, and honestly, Mrs. Kisner did an incredible job too, and it was a lot of people getting a team together to be able to see what's on the minds of students. And I think Mr. Funk, Mr. Page, they do an incredible job every day of hearing what's on the minds of students. And as a principal, to be able to hear those things and still, here's some ways and mechanisms. And I know he's got a task list, some things he wants to follow up, and I know he's going to. And there's a lot of different things, and we're set to help. And that's our goal, where he's not set to do it on his own, but rather we're going to collaborate and do it together.
Okay,
and
so
that's the name of the game.
Let's have a hand
We're not
for
doing it
everybody. Everybody did a good job.
April Fools, no, you're on your own.
Unnerving that there were like cameras and then iPads. I was a little
Intimidated?
It was a little unnerving. I was like, what am I walking into?
And that's a great example of how that media class evolved too, to be able to take interviews and to be able to interview. They interviewed Dr. Jones, they interviewed students, and they interviewed the student moderators. They set up their cameras, they tested the cameras, they tested the angles. They were serious about this.
They dressed up appropriately.
And that was all their ideas too. They were the ones that came up with the ideas of asking the questions. They talked about the camera angles. It was student led.
They did great. Kudos.
All right, everyone.
Do I hear a motion to adjourn? Just an